Children. Well, the day is coming. It's almost here. Are you ready? Don't you just hate it when people ask you that? I mean, come on. If you are not ready, you immediately start thinking about all those things you've got to do as soon as you can get out of here. And if you're like me, you're very smug, who thinks that I've got the cookies baked, the fudge made, the cards mailed, the packages got wrapped and ready to go under the tree, you still start those wheels turning and you start thinking about, what have I forgotten? Who have I forgotten? What do I need to do? Because there's always that last minute stuff. Well, this morning, I want you to gather all those thoughts, all those worries, all those concerns, and I want you to put them in an imaginary box in your lap. And then I want you to take some red ribbon and tie it in a bow, and tie it tight so they can't get out, and slide it under the pew. Now, you can pick it up and take it with you when you leave if you really want to worry. But I'd like you to have just a few minutes of peace. A few minutes to relax and worship. The day is coming. And Jesus came not so that we might have all of this confusion in our lives, but so that we might have peace and love and joy and hope. I wonder sometimes if we spend so much effort in preparing to celebrate that we forget to come and just worship. So this morning I want us to have that time where we can enjoy the very presence of Jesus. Jesus said, in my favorite verse of Scripture, Jesus said that He came that we might have life abundant. That means a life that's filled with love and joy and hope and peace. May also have a lot of other things in it as well. But He wants us to have those gifts that He has prepared for us. It's really hard sometimes for us to find peace in this world. We would love to be able to be at rest and at peace. But we live in a world where there is war and violence everywhere we look. We live in a world where we cannot help but be afraid. We're afraid to go to the mall. We're afraid to go to a concert. We're afraid to go to school or to go to work. We're afraid to get on an airplane because of the threat of terrorism. It seems that there is no place that is safe. Not even the church. I read about some pastors, it was on the news the other night, some pastors in California that have gone out and bought guns and have gone to shooting practice and taken lessons so that they can go to church and protect their parishioners. Is that what Jesus wanted us to do? You know, when Jesus was born, He was born at a time when there was oppression and war and friction everywhere. The Romans were the oppressors. They were controlling Israel. And Jesus came in order that they might have peace. Jesus came to Bethlehem to fulfill the prophecy that Isaiah had given 2,000 years before. That they would have a new king. That the king would be in the lineage of David. And that he would bring peace and joy and hope. I want to read for you. Goodness, I didn't expect that to happen. I want to read for you from Isaiah, and it'll be up on the screen. We're going to read Isaiah from the 9th chapter, these very familiar words, which is the promise that God made through Isaiah. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as people exult when dividing plunder. For the yoke of their burden and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For all the boots of the tramping warriors and all the garments rolled in blood shall be burned as fuel for the fire. For a child has been born for us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His authority shall grow continually, and there shall be endless peace. Endless peace. And yet, we still live in a world that is fraught with danger and war and violence. I wonder, do we come to the manger seeking the Jesus of peace? Do we come to celebrate? Do we come to worship? Well, I know that there are some who come with other purposes in mind. It seems that there have been a rash of thefts. People who come to the manger and steal the baby Jesus out of the manger. Now, who would do such a thing? What are they looking for? Well, I want you to just imagine it for a minute. There have been some churches, and this is true, some churches who have had their baby Jesus stolen so many times that they've put a GPS device on him so they can track his whereabouts. True, I swear. Now, I want you to just imagine this scene. They have this baby Jesus with the GPS, and the signal goes off. And the pastor checks really quick to find out where the baby Jesus is going. And he sees that it's moving out. He calls Sheriff Grady. Now, you all know Sheriff Grady. He's on the news every night. And he calls Sheriff Grady and says, somebody has stolen our baby Jesus. You better come. And so the sheriff comes racing over. You know, he's always on the job. He must work 24 hours a day, that man. So he comes over, and he and the pastor make their way to follow the GPS signal, and it comes to a house not far from the church. And the pastor knocks on the door, and this very tired, harried-looking woman comes to the door and opens the door and looks into the face of the pastor, and he says, "Do you have baby Jesus?" And she is shocked and surprised, and she looks at him like he's either out of his mind or drunk, one of the two. And then she looks over and she sees Sheriff Grady. Well, you know, the jig is up. So she is just very, she can't imagine what the sheriff is doing on her doorstep. And about that time, her 14-year-old son comes to the door. And the sheriff immediately, you know how sharp he is, he immediately figures that this could be the culprit. And he says, "Son, what did you do with baby Jesus?" And the boy is all red-faced and stammering, and finally he leads them back to his bedroom, and he opens his sock drawer and takes out the baby Jesus. Now, I doubt that the kid's going to do any hard time for this theft. But I can't help but admire him. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we all wanted to have Jesus in our life enough that we would risk stealing him? But the truth is, we don't have to steal him. He wants to come with us and willingly. Now, he doesn't want to live in your sock drawer. He wants to live in your heart. Do you have room in there for him? Sometimes our hearts get so filled with the things of this world, with selfishness, with greed, with self-righteousness, with a desire to always be right, with anger and hatred. It's a sad world. It's a sad world if our hearts have no room for Jesus. If we have to get out the guns to protect our church. You know, I keep thinking about those pastors and wondering what Jesus would say to them. You know, Jesus was born into a time when there was a lot of violence and war and friction. And the Romans would, if anybody would not kneel before and proclaim that Caesar was God, they could be crucified. They would be nailed to a cross, and the cross would hang next to the road so that everybody who passed by would see it, and they would know the price they would pay if they did not kneel to Caesar. This was the society that Jesus was brought into this world in. He grew up seeing these things. And yet, Jesus never picked up arms. He never rallied an army. As a matter of fact, I'd like to read for you what Jesus said about these things. Do you remember in the Garden of Gethsemane when he was being arrested by the soldiers? One of his followers picked up a sword and sliced off the ear of one of the soldiers. And Jesus rebuked him. And he took the ear and he put it back on. He would not even pick up arms to defend himself. He says in in Luke, it's the 6th chapter. I say to you, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Love your enemies. Do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. These are the words of Jesus to his followers who were living in a time of war and violence and oppression. Don't you wish that Jesus hadn't said that? I mean, why does he say these things? We would so much rather pray for our friends and hate our enemies. We would so much rather demand from others. We would so much rather judge than be willing to be judged. You see, I believe that Jesus knew that it takes greater strength and courage to look for peace, to be the one who walks and works for peace. Jesus is coming. Are you ready? He wants you to go home with you. Now, don't stick him in the sock drawer. He wants to come home and dwell in your hearts. But friends, if your hearts are so full of greed and anger and hurt and hatefulness and self-righteousness, he can't live in that kind of atmosphere. There's no room there for him. So perhaps the best thing we can do to prepare for his coming is to cleanse our hearts, to forgive and be forgiven, to love as we have been loved, and to seek to find peace. You see, there's not much you and I can do to change the wars in this world. Oh, we can pray fervently, and we should be praying fervently, that people all over the world would come to know the desire for peace. But there's not much we can do other than pray. But friends, there is a great deal that we can do in our own lives. We can seek to find peace in our homes, in our neighborhoods, where we work, in our church, in our hearts. Peace is not something that's outside of us. It's something that we can find within when we accept Christ and allow Him to dwell in us, to clean out all that garbage that's there. We need to prepare a place for Him within us. This morning, as we close our sermon time, I want us to meditate on what it would mean for us to pray and to live in peace. Our beautiful choir is going to lead us singing through one time, "Let There Be Peace on Earth." The words will be up on the screen, and they're going to do it once, and then I'd like all of us to join in together with them in singing, "Let There Be Peace on Earth."